Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be building a recipe finder. So we're going to be using the mealdb API. We're going to be searching for a meal by the name, so this is the GET request that we're going to be sending, and then we're going to build out our application in ReactJs and TailwindCSS. So this is a demonstration of what we're going to be building. We have a search bar here, and we're going to be displaying the name of the food that we're searching for, the category, and then the region that it comes from, and then we obviously show the image. We get the ingredients as well, and then we also show the instructions, and we have a link to the video tutorial in case you want to watch it, which is basically just a YouTube link. So if I go ahead and search for another meal such as chicken, what you will notice is we are going to get back a bunch of results because there are many foods that have chicken in the title, because we're searching for the food by the title. But if I go and get something more specific such as this, then I'm only going to be getting the one single food item. So that is what we're going to be building. It is a very nice application, and therefore let's begin. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my terminal, and then inside my terminal I'm going to cd into my desktop, and then I'm going to say npx create react app at latest, and then I'm going to call this recipe finder, and then I'm going to let this run, and then once it finishes running, then we are going to install Tailwind, and then we're going to officially begin. Okay, so once that finishes running, then I'm going to cd into my newly created folder called recipe finder, and then I want to go ahead and navigate into TailwindCSS so that we can install TailwindCSS, and I'm in the wrong link. Let's say get started, and then let's go into the framework guides. So framework guides, come on, what is happening? Framework guides, and here is create react app. And then because we've already done these two steps, so all you need to do is just go to this third one. So copy, then paste it here, and then let it run, and then copy this, and then let this finish running. There we go, and then just paste in our next link, and then let's go ahead and copy this part. And now once we reach here, then we need to actually open up our application in a code editor. So I'm using VS Code, so I'm just going to say code dot, and this is going to open up an instance of Visual Studio Code into this folder. There we go. So once it opens up, then let's go ahead into our tailwind config.js, and then let's just paste that inside here, and then save it, and then we can go ahead and copy this part, copy and paste it in our index.css. So inside the index.css right there, just paste it on top, and there we go. And then now we should be able to run our server, and then we can begin using Tailwind in our application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down, and then I'm going to go back into our workspace, and what I want to do is I want to delete the app CSS, I want to delete the app test.js, the logo, reported vitals, and setup tests, and then I'm just going to delete them. And then inside my index.js, I'm going to delete this part because we're not using this file anymore, and then we're just going to remove its import as well, and then save it. And then inside app.js, I'm going to select everything, and then I'm just going to say export default function app, and then I'm just going to say return an h1 that says hello world, and save it. And then using Ctrl and J to open up my integrated terminal, I'm going to say npm run start, which is going to open up my server on localhost 3000 so that we can take a look at our application. And there we go. So once this opens up, you can see that we're only showing hello world to the screen. So the first thing that we need to do is this. We just need to go ahead and build out our structure. So our demo structure is just going to look like this. We're going to return a fragment first of all, and then we're going to return an h1 that says recipe finder, and then below this h1 we are going to have a form which is going to be our search bar, and then the form is going to have an input with a type of text with a name of search and an ID of search, and the placeholder here is just going to say search for a food, and then we're going to set it to required so that we're not able to submit the form without filling in the input. And then once we have that, then below this form, we're going to have a div, and then this div is going to be the parent for all the search results that we're going to be showing. So this div is going to have an h2 that says name of the food, and then the h2 is going to have a span that says it was the category, and then it's also going to have another span that says the region that the food comes from. And then below this h2, we're going to have an image, and for now we can just get a stock image. So let's go into pexels.com, and then let's just get this one for the stock image. So just copy image address and then paste it here. We can leave the alt attribute to be empty for now because we're going to remove this image anyway. And then below this, we're going to have an h3 that says ingredients, an h3, not an h1. And then we're going to have a bunch of items, so we can just get like a ul with 3 list items. So let's just do 3 for now, and then let's say item 1, and then item 2, and then item 3. And then below this, we're going to have another h3 that is going to say instructions. And then for the instructions, we're just going to have a paragraph. For now, I'm just going to generate some random text. So let me say learn 20. And then below this paragraph, we're going to have a ul with 2 list items. And the first one is going to say video. And then the second one is going to say source. So if the source of the food, like the actual link to the website where the recipe was found, if it exists, then we're going to show it here. Now, I just noticed that I want all of this to be inside another parent. And in this case, I'm going to use an article because I want each of the search results that we get back to be inside an article. It is just a better structure. So I'm going to save that. And then when I save it, if you take a look at what we have on the screen, then we're going to have this. Okay, so I just want to style this out to be a bit better before we begin to send our get requests. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to go ahead and inside my h1, I'm going to give this a class name of, let me say, text-4xl, the flat screens text-5xl, and then I'm going to give it a text neutral of 800, and then I'm going to say bg neutral dash, let me say 200, and then I'll say rounded dash large. Let me save it. Let's see what we have on the screen. We have that, so it needs to be font bold text center. Look at that. Okay, and then I just noticed that we need a parent for everything so that I'm able to limit all this so that it doesn't go all the way to the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place this inside a div, and then notice that it is also replaced on the bottom, so make sure that you check that. So here we're going to say div, we're going to give it a class name of padding on the y of 20, padding on the x of 8, or you know what, I can do padding on the x of 2, just a very slim padding for mobile. And then I'm going to say give this a class name of max width dash 4xl, which is going to limit all this so that it doesn't go all the way to the end. And then to push it to the center, I'm going to give it a margin on the x-axis of auto, which is going to place an equal margin on the left and right. Therefore, this pushes to the center. And then that is it for our heading. Now we just need to deal with our search input. So for the input, I'm going to give this a class name, and I'm going to say width dash full. I'm going to say padding on the y of 3, padding on the x of 4. Sorry, not of 4, but of 8. Give it a rounded of full to give it a rounded border, and then give it a background color of neutral dash, what is it, 200. Same as this one. No, that's looking ugly. Let's say 100. Okay, and then give it a border of 2 with a border dash neutral dash 800. There we go. Okay, and then what I want is this. Actually not, this should be lighter, so let me say about 200, so that is just a bit lighter, so that when I focus on it, then the border is going to change to neutral dash 800. So let's test out. There we go. And then I also want that on focus, I want a ring size of 4, and then on focus I want the ring to be neutral dash 800, so it gives this kind of ring. And then the reason why it's kind of like a double border is because it has an outline. So we can say outline dash none, outline dash none, and it's going to remove that outline. There we go. So this is what I want to have, right? And then let's go inside the form. Oops. Let's give it a class name of margin on the Y of 16 to push away from the heading as well as from this part. And then let's go ahead and style out our title here. And then I want this text to be just a bit bigger. So let me say large screens, then the text is going to be XL, just to make this a bit bigger. Now let's style this out. So for the H2, we're going to have similar classes to the H1. So let me just copy this and then paste it inside the H2. Oops. Really? There we go. And then I don't want the text center, so we can remove the text center. I want the font to be bold. I don't need the rounded large. I don't need the background color either. And then this is going to reduce to 4XL and this is going to reduce to 3XL. Let's save that, and then we're going to have that. And then we need to style this out to be just a bit different. So inside the span here, I'm going to give this a class name of bg neutral dash, what is it, 100. What did I do on the heading? bg neutral 200. So let's use 200 as well. And then it's going to give this slight gray background color. And then the font is going to change to light. And then the font size, the font size is going to change into text dash small to make it just a bit smaller. There we go. And now this shouldn't be light, this should be normal. There we go. And then I want to give it a padding on the x-axis of about 2, just to increase the padding on this just a bit. And then I'm going to say rounded dash full to give it a rounded border. And then I'm going to paste these classes. So just copy this and paste them on the second span, save it, and we're going to have that. Now, just to make sure that this is perfectly to the center, just like with the heading, what I'm going to do is inside the H2, I'm going to give this H2 a class name of flex because the spans exist inside the H2. So I'm going to save that, and that is going to do that. And then I'm going to say items dash center, which is going to bring them downwards. And then I'm going to give it a gap of about 2, just to separate it out or separate them out just a bit. And I can say 4. I think 4 is better. Let's use 4. So name of the food, we have the category, and then we have the region. And then let's give it a margin bottom to separate it out or to push it downwards from the image. So right here we can say margin bottom of about 12. And then for large screens, the margin bottom is going to be 16. And we are going to have that. Okay, this is too much. Let's just reduce it to 12. There we go. And then let's go ahead and style the ingredients. Now for the ingredients, it's going to have the same styles as this one, except it's just going to be a smaller font size. So let's just go ahead and copy these classes here, paste them on the H3 here. And then we don't need the margin bottom of 12. We can reduce it to about 8. And then what else? We don't need flex, so we can remove these 2 classes. And then we don't need the gap either, so let's remove it. And then this is going to reduce to 2XL, and then this is going to say 3XL. But you know what? I can just have it to be 2XL for both of them. There we go. So those are our ingredients. And then I need this to push away from the image. So I'm going to give it a margin Y instead of margin bottom. So margin Y of 8, meaning margin on the top and bottom of 8. And then let's style out our ingredients. And for this one, I'm going to style them out in our index.css. So I'm going to remove this part because we don't need it. But I want that for the paragraphs as well as for the list items to have, I'm going to say at apply text neutral dash 600. So they're going to have this like grayish color. And then what I want is I want them to have a line height of about 1.8 just to separate them out. I think it is much easier to read, especially if you're on mobile. Now, once we do that, then I want these styles to apply on this H3 as well. So I'm going to go back and just copy the styles for this H3 and then paste them here for the instructions. And then we're going to have that for instructions. And then now we just need to style out the video, this link for the video as well as the link for the source. And then I'm going to say this. I'm going to go ahead into my span here, copy these classes, and then I'm going to paste them on the list item here as well as on the source here. And then I'm going to save it, and we're going to have that. Now, obviously, I don't want this to be text small. I want this to be text base so that it goes back to the base font size of 16 pixels. and then save it, and we're going to have that. And then we need to change this UL into a flex box. So I'm going to say give this a class name of flex and item center and justify center. And then I'm going to add flex wrap just in case, even though it's not going to be what's the word? I'm forgetting the word. Let me just demonstrate it. What flex wrap does is, if these two items cannot fit horizontally here, then they're automatically going to go into the next line. Obviously, we can't see the demonstration here because I need to add flex wrap on this one. So let's go ahead and do that. So inside the H2 right here, I'm going to add flex wrap, and what it does is this: if I shrink it down, then it automatically goes into the next line instead of causing the overflow, just as you saw. And that is basically what is going to happen to these ones as well. Now, I don't want this to be centered. I want it to be on the left. So we are going to remove item center. We're going to change this to items start. So it's going to go back here. That's not the correct one. It is item center and justify start. Sorry about that. Justify start. There we go. And then let's add a margin on the top of about, what did I use? 8. So let's say margin top of 8, just to push it away from this part right there. And then these are going to be links, and we're going to change them into links, but for now they can just remain to be like that. It doesn't change anything that much. Now I need this to be numbered, so right inside the UL, I'm going to give this a class name, and I'm going to say list dash decimal, and it's going to introduce numbered lists. And then with the introduction of these numbers, you can see that it is just a bit outside of the layout that we have. So I need to push this inwards, and I do that by adding a padding on the left of about 8, and it's going to push them inwards, and not it is 4, just to have them on the same line here. So that looks okay. That looks okay. So now what we can do is we can change the title, and we can begin to work on our get request. So let me just go ahead and copy this link, because this is the link that we're going to be using. And if I open this up, you will notice that we're going to be getting back an object, and then inside the object, an array called meals exists inside, and it carries all the meals that we're going to be searching for. In this case, we are searching for this meal, and we get back a bunch of items. So what I'm going to do therefore is this: I'm going to go inside my public folder, inside my index.html, and then I'm going to change this into recipe finder and save it. And then that is going to change the title. And then once we do that, then inside our app.js, we need to work on our get request. So right on top, my phone battery. So my phone died, so you can no longer see me, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say import use state and use effect from React. And then let's go ahead and we're going to set up 2 state values. So I'm going to call my state values meals and set meals, and then this is equal to use state, and by default is going to be an empty array. Now it's going to be an empty array because this is the state value that we're going to be populating when we make our get request. I'm going to set up another one called meal and set meal, and this is going to be equal to use state, and by default it's going to be an empty string. For now, really, it's going to be an empty string, because this is what we're going to be using to change our input into a controlled input, so that we can get what we type in and then append it to our get request, so that we can then fill in the state value of our empty array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function here called get meals, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this into an asynchronous function, because I want to use the await keyword. So I'm going to say const response. So the response that we get back is equal to await fetch, and then we're going to be fetching the URL that we copied. Okay, now this one returns this one as the meal by default. For now, we just need to add https so that it makes the correct get request, but we're going to be changing this to a dynamic input depending on what we have here. So what we're going to do is this: so once we get the response, then we're going to say const data is equal to await res.json, meaning convert it to JSON. and then I'm going to say set meals into data.meals, meaning we are going to be populating our first date value using the response that we get back from here. And I'm saying data.meals because we are getting back an object first of all. So I'm going inside the object and getting the array called meals because that is the one that we want. So once we have that, we're going to set up our use effect. And then we're going to have an empty dependency array so that it only runs on the initial render. And then I'm going to call my function called get meals. And then I'm going to save that. And then, you know what, let me do a console log here. So console log data.meals. And then we can go ahead into our application. Let's just search for something. Let's get the inspect tab. Let's go into the console. And you can see that we get an array of one item, which is the correct thing. So we're getting this meal. So that is looking okay. Now what we need to do is we need to get it from here and then display it in our application to the user. Therefore, what we're going to do is this. I'm going to first of all change this. I'm going to remove this and then change my function into a try catch block. So try catch meaning try first of all whether this can go through, and if it can, then it's going to execute it. But if it cannot, then I just want to say console.error, and I want to console error the error that we're going to have. So that is much better. Now what we're going to do is we need to map over all these items that we're going to have in our array. In this case, it's only one item, but if I were to change this into something like chicken, we're going to get back a bunch of items. So we're going to map over the data that we have, and then we're going to display it inside this div in the structure of the articles that we have inside here, the articles that we were creating. So therefore, what we need to do is I'm going to cut out my article, cut it out, and then I'm going to say this. I'm going to say meals.map, and then for every meal that we get back, then I want to return that single article. So I'm going to paste this inside here. And what you'll notice is this. I'm going to save it, and then nothing is going to change on the screen. Now notice that we're only getting back one item, right? Now I'm going to change this into chicken. Oops. And then once it executes, now look, we're getting back a bunch of items because we're getting back this article. We are displaying this article for every single item in the array called meals. Now we don't want that to happen, so we can begin to substitute this out. So instead of just saying name of the food, we're going to change this and we're going to say meal.str what was it? I've forgotten. str meal. So let me zoom in. So str meal is the name of the food. So meal.str meal, and then the category is going to say, where is it? str category. So meal.str category, and then this is going to say region, where is it? Str area. So meal.str area, and then ingredients, this is going to be hard coded because these are the ingredients. We're just adding in our title, but for the image we're going to change this out, and then we're going to say meal.str meal thumb. I think that is the correct one. This one, there we go. That is the thumbnail image. And then for the alt attribute, in case the image fails to load, I'm just going to say meal.str meal, because that is the title of the meal. So in case the image fails to load, then just display the title of the meal. And then once we have that, then for the items here, I'm not going to do that right away because it's a bit of a process, but I want to change this up. So for the text, for the instructions, I'm going to say meal.str instructions. Is that correct? str instructions, there we go. And then str YouTube is going to be the video. So now this is going to be a link. So we need to change this up to a link. So I'm going to add an href, and then the href is going to say meal.str YouTube. I think that is the correct casing, yes. And then I want this to open on a new page. So I'm going to say target is equal to underscore blank. And then I'm going to change the rel into no referrer. And then this is just going to say video. And then we're going to do something similar. So let me just copy this and paste it here. And then this is going to say str source. and then this is just going to say source. So let's go ahead and save that, and then now let's see what you have on the screen. Would you look at that? Now we are getting back a bunch of items and we're displaying the correct thing. The only thing that looks bad here is the images. We need the images to span 100% of their container. So let's fix that. So right above this in my index.css, I'm going to say set the images to have a max width over 100%, and then we're just going to say display block, and that is going to do nothing because now I need to go ahead into the images, into the image here, and give it a class name, and I'm going to say width -full, which is going to have them take up 100% of their width. So that is looking much better. Now look at this. See how there's no spacing here? I placed a div before the article. The reason why I did that is so that I can go inside this div and give it a class name of grid and give it a gap of 8 to separate them out. So just to separate this out, and this is too small, so let's say 12 or even 16. We can just say 16 just to separate this out. So the gap of 16 is this one here. That is much better. Now I'm looking for something here. If I can find it, I don't know if I can find it, but what I'm looking for is this. See this right here? It's a backslash. So let me see. It's a backslash and it's not showing. Anyway, that's okay. Usually when you get characters like that, you will need to change up how you're displaying your data, and the way you do that is by going inside your instructions, and then instead of setting this inside here, you set it into an attribute here called dangerously set inner HTML, and then add your brackets here and say that for the HTML, set it to mail.str instructions. And this just ensures that it displays data correctly from an API if you're going to have special characters inside your API. But in this case, I'm seeing that it is displaying it correctly, so we can just remove this and render our paragraph and then say mail.str instructions, and then save it. Now for the ingredients, this is what we're going to do. See how the ingredients here match up to the measures that you're going to need. So we need to display the measure and then the ingredient, but notice that there are some ingredients that do not exist, and there are 20 of them. Sorry, not really do not exist, but like all meals have a different number of ingredients. So sometimes you can display ingredient 1 up to 8, but there are other meals that have ingredient 9 up to 16, for example. So we need to check for every single ingredient and then for every single measure, and then display it for every meal. Now the way we do that is this. I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that check for whether str ingredient exists, and then sorry, this should say meal.str ingredient, and then also check whether meal.str measure 1, this should say 1 and ingredient 1, because that is how they're numbered. They're numbered 1 up to 20. So check for whether this exists, and also check for whether this exists. So if they both exist, we're going to add another ampersand. We're going to say return a list item, and then we're going to return the measure because we need to return the measure and then the ingredient. So I'm going to say return the meal.str measure 1, and then we're going to return meal.str ingredient 1. So save that and look at what we're going to have on the screen. So you have 1.2 kg chicken, and we are going to do that for every single item up to number 20. So therefore what I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to, let's save this first of all, and then let's copy this 19 more times. So copy and paste it. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19. Where did I mess up? Really? Let's undo everything. Undo. I messed up somewhere because I don't know how to count. Save it. Let's see. Oh, I should copy this entire thing. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And then we just need to substitute the numbers. So instead of this saying 1, just select it and say Control D, change it to 2, and then do the same thing, change it to 3, select 1 here, Control D, change it to 4, select the 1 here, Control D, change it to 5 here, oops, change it to 6, and then here 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and finally 19, and finally 20. There we go. So let's save it, and then now we should get all our ingredients. Would you look at that? So now we are checking for whether all the ingredients exist, and we're just displaying them. Would you look at that? So now we have that for our ingredients. See, now like this one has 9 items, but this one has 16 items. So you have to check for every single one of them. Now let's add a space here on our UL, which is this one. Let's add a gap of 4 just to separate this out a bit. There we go. And then let's increase the padding. I think the padding is a bit too small. Let's have a padding all around of 2. I think that is, or rather let's say padding 2, padding on the Y of 2, padding on the X of 4. I think that is better, or padding on the X of 6. Yeah, let's have 6. And then here let's have padding on the X of 6, padding on the Y of 2. That is much better. Now let's add our hover effect. So on hover, I want the BG to change into neutral dash 400, and then with a slight transition, so transition dash all with a duration of 150 milliseconds. And then let me just copy this part and paste it here, save it, and then now we're going to have a hover effect. And on hover, I think this text is not really readable that much, so let's say that on hover, then the text should go into neutral dash 800, and then copy this and paste it here, save it, and we're going to have that is much better. And of course you can click them to go into the link. What? Oh, you know what, I know what I've done. So some of them don't have the source, so we need to check whether the source exists. So we're going to cut this out, and we're going to say that only when mail.str source exists, that's when we want to render this list item, so that when I save it, you'll notice that this is going to disappear because the source for this food does not exist. And we need to do the same thing for the video. So just cut this out and say when mail.str YouTube exists, that's when I want to render that list item for the video, so that you ensure that only the buttons or the links that show up here are going to be the ones for that actually exist really. Now I noticed something, because I added the padding on the list item, so this part is not clickable, only the text is clickable. So in order to change that, we just need to go ahead and grab these class names off of the list item and then place them on the anchor tag. So let's place them here on the end, and then just cut them out from here and place them on the anchor tag and save it, so that now the entire thing is clickable. So even if I click here, then it is clickable, and if I click here, it is also clickable. I think that is going to be the end of it. Oh, you know what, we haven't dealt with our form. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for our form, it's very simple. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to add a value here, and we're going to set the value into the mail state value. Remember the mail state value, this one, which is an empty string. Now I don't want it to be an empty string by default, because I want that when the application loads in, it loads some items. So we're going to search for what was spelling? Arabiata. I think that was the spelling. And then I'm now going to change this into a dynamic get request because I don't want to search for chicken. Instead, I want to search for what is typed in, or rather I want to search for the meal state value. So I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to say we want to append the plus meal. We want to append a meal to the end of this get request. Meaning, if I save this, now we're going to be getting the Arabiata here. So we are searching for this one because we have appended it to the end of this get request. Now what we need to do is notice that now the default value is now our state value, meaning if I change this state value to chicken, then that is also going to be our default value inside here. Now I don't want that. I want it to go back to my default, obviously. And then I want to have my onSubmit event on the form. So on submit, I'm going to say handle submit. So let's go ahead and create this function. So we're going to say function handle submit, and then I want to access the synthetic event of e, where I can say e.prevent default, which is going to prevent the default behavior of the form reloading the entire page when it is submitted. So I'm going to save that, and you'll notice that now I can submit the form, but the page does not reload. That is what I want to happen. And then once I do that, then I want to go ahead and call this function once again. So I'm just going to say get meals. And what that is going to do is it is going to call this function whenever we submit the form. And this function is basically this one right here. And remember that this function depends on the meal which is typed in, which we're going to type in, right? I hope that makes sense. I really hope that makes sense. Now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and use our state value here, the function, and we're going to use it inside the onChange. And you know what, let me first of all show you what happens if we don't. If I try to type inside my form, we can't type in because we have set the value equal to our meal. So we need to have an onChange attribute here, and then using this synthetic event of e, we're going to say set meal into e.target.value, which means we are going to change our state value here called meal depending on whatever we type inside the form, because we are calling the set meal function inside here. So let's go ahead and save that, and then now I can type in and I can search for chicken. Notice that nothing happens until I submit the form, and then we now search for chicken. If I search for beef, then we are also going to get back a bunch of items for beef, and if I search for beef asado, then we only get back the one item. Now what happens if you search for something that doesn't exist? Our application breaks. Fantastic, right? In order to fix this, we just need to add an error boundary in our application, meaning we just don't need to render this, because the reason why we're getting an error is because we are trying to populate this array, our state value of the array, but the meal that we're searching for does not exist, so we're not getting anything back from the API. So we just need to add an error boundary, and how we do that is we're just going to cut out this entire div which ends here. So just cut it out, and then we're going to add a check here, and we're going to say when meals is true, you know what, let me use my tertiary operator. So when meals is true, I want to render my entire div, and then when it is false, I want to render an h2 that says sorry, we couldn't search for, and then I want to display whatever the user typed in so that they know that what they typed in here is wrong, or rather it does not exist in the API. So let's go ahead and save that, and then now we should be able to see something. If I search for something that doesn't exist, then we get this, and obviously we need to style this out. So let me copy the styles on the h2. I can use this one, copy, and then paste them here. And then we don't need the margin bottom, but we do need the margin top. So margin top 12, text neutral. We need, I think we don't need the flex. We don't need the flex box here. Let's remove it. And then we don't need the text for XL. And then I want this to be text center. Save it. and we should have that. There we go. So we couldn't search for this, and then you can search for something else. So chicken, and there we go. There we go, looking fantastic. So now we don't have any errors in our application, and you can check it out in the console. We are not getting any errors. This is the previous error, so just reload it so that you don't get any errors inside here. And oh, I'm not rendering the key. How did I forget the key? So we are returning a list every time that we are searching for a meal. So inside here, every item that you get back, in this case, which is the article, it needs to have a unique key. And in this case, I'm going to say meal dot what was the key? It was id meal. So id meal dot id meal. Save it, and then now zoom this out, and then we can check out this, make sure that we don't have any errors, and there we go, looking fantastic. So let me go ahead and deploy this to GitHub. So I'm going to open up my GitHub profile, and so in my GitHub, I'm going to create a new repository here, and then I'm going to say recipe dash finder. Let me say ReactJs, ReactJs recipe finder, create repository, and then let me just copy this link, and then I'm going to open up my terminal using Ctrl+J, and then shut it down because we don't need that. And then let's say Ctrl+B to open this up so that we can commit it to GitHub. So I'm going to say git add all and git commit -m, and I'm going to say initial commit, and then I'm going to say git remote add origin, and then paste in my link to my remote repository, and then git branch capital M, so -m capital main to change the branch to the main branch, and then git push -u origin main to push it to my remote repository, and then that is going to push it. There we go. So that when I reload this, I should be able to see my repository right there. So that is looking nice. And actually, that is going to be the end of the video. And if you enjoyed it, then please leave a like. I tried something new with this video. I hope you liked it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Remember to subscribe.